If you are an attacking player, you need to be playing attacking openings. One such opening is the Austrian attack against the modern defence. Here white charges 3 pawns into the centre at an early stage, and really takes the game to black. Here we see Karjakin use this to great effect against the Swedish Grandmaster Tiger Hillarp Persson from their Benidorm rapid play match in November 2003. So this opening starts, the modern defence is characterised by e4 g6, and what black does with the modern is delay the development of this knight on g8. In the Perk defence, which is a very similar one, black actually plays knight f6 very early and doesn't delay moving this knight. Why do you think black might want to do that? Well, as we're going to see in the game anyway, one of white's ideas against the modern is to try and charge with e5. And if the knight stands on f6, there are chances that the knight will already be attacked. So here we see black delaying that. Okay, let's see how white can play the Austrian attack. Now f4. I think white's idea in this is it's a very aggressive opening to play, where white basically says, well, you haven't put any pawns in the centre, so I'm going to stake space out really early here like this. Other variations are the 150 attack, like bishop e3. This is one I tend to teach a lot of my pupils because it's a very simple idea, f3, queen d2, and castles queenside, followed normally by some kind of pawn storm with g4 and h4. So there are many ways to skin the cat here, but I think that for those with a super aggressive style of play, f4 is the one to watch for. And we're going to see Karjakin use this again here, where black decides to play the normal moves a6. Now, why is black playing moves like that, especially since we haven't developed quite a lot of our minor pieces? Well, the idea for black is to gain space like this, and delay moving one of my centre pawns. So black will eventually move one of these pawns here to c5, or to e5 at some moment. But black is going to delay that until he sees what white does. So in the meantime, black's going to try and play b5 and bishop b7, just to attack white's centre pawn here. It's a kind of cat and mouse game, but it's a very dangerous game for black to be playing, especially since white has such a control of the centre. Right, knight f3, b5, and bishop d3. So very sensible moves from Karjakin here, as white is just putting his pieces in the centre. We've already talked, in many of his games, he plays very sensible moves. A lot of the moves that Karjakin plays are moves that I think most players would play. He's not doing anything unusual. He's just going to develop and castle. Now, of course, white could just castle here, but instead he decided to charge forward with e5. Why did he do that? Is it reckless? Well, I think I asked that question many times in these games of Sergei's. The point in this position, though, is he's trying to prevent that idea of knight f6. So where can the knight go? Black would have to consider going knight h6, and that's not really the best square. Of course, there might be a home for it on f5 at some moment, but then white can consider ideas like g4. So black has to be now a little bit careful since white is attacking this early. Another idea is for black to play e6 and knight e7, and I believe that's one of the ways that black tries to counter this idea of this early e5. So, c5. Now, black's trying to strike at white's centre. This is one of those positions where both sides need to be very careful, because black still is way behind in development, but if he can smash this white centre here in green, then white's position will be reduced to rubble. So, the position already on move 7 has reached a critical moment. And what does white have to do here? Well, he keeps attacking. Bishop e4. We've already spoken about how this is an attacking opening. Let's continue that way. And castles. Apparently this move is a novelty, but again, as I said, Sergei plays very natural moves here. Castling early, something I've talked about a lot. Again, he does it. On the other hand, we're going to see, like we saw in game 20, the opponent having the king on e8, and is it really going to be going away anytime soon? Black has to consider knight h6, and it's a little bit slow. So in the meantime, the Swedish Grandmaster Hillarp Persson decided, well, let's try and destroy this centre. Now, he can of course win a pawn, which he does, on e5. What does white have in compensation? What I mean by compensation is white has given up a pawn, but what does he have in return for this? Well, we see a huge lead in development. Of course, a safer king, and a chance now to play knight c6, which attacks black even further. Of course, the Grandmaster from Sweden had seen this idea of the fork on the two pieces, and he instead decided to take advantage of the fact that white has no f-pawn on towards his king, protecting his king like this. Queen b6 check. Okay, so black avoids this exchange of rook for knight, but after the simple king h1, he had a choice to make. Does black move the rook on b8 again and allow white chances to attack, or do we just sacrifice it and try and develop? What would you do? Well, black could have moved the rook. Let's have a look at rook b7. And, of course, white tries to open lines. We talked about in the previous game. If you have a lead in development, the onus is on you to try and press your opponent. That means opening lines, it means developing your pieces very fast, and it means also trying to look for tactics along the way. With the f-file open, black now has to be extremely careful towards the f7 square. And also, this pawn on e5 still prevents a knight coming to f6, so it's very dangerous for black, this position. And that will be demonstrated after moves like knight takes e5 and bishop e3. That's an excellent move here. Take advantage of black's lack of development and the weak king in the centre. Can you see what would happen if black took on e3? Checkmate. Another example of black's, not developing the pieces. It's a really important idea. So after bishop e3, it looks like black is in huge trouble here already. So Hillarp Persson decided to just sacrifice the exchange and played knight f6. So, of course, we took the rook. Now, black has a pawn for the exchange here, but he still has a problem with coordination. I would say that the only way the exchange is going to be good is if these minor pieces start reaching some good squares. If black can somehow go bishop b7, maybe throw in b4 at some moment to kick the knight on c3, there are going to be some chances for him. So now that the nature of the game has changed a little bit, Karjakin has to use his pieces wisely, otherwise he will allow black the chance to gain the initiative himself. So, he keeps attacking with sensible moves, bishop f4. This is a nice idea, because the pin on the queen is going to be very annoying for black here. And again, he can't play a move like bishop b7, because we lose the knight on e5. So, black decided, well, I'll castle, and bishop f3. So what white needs to do now is develop these major pieces. Already the rook on f1 is standing on a good square, attacking down the f-file. What do you think we need to do with our queen and our rook? Well, the queen could maybe go to e2, and the rook can slide across somewhere like this. So the game has reached a critical point again, but in a very different way to what we discussed before. Black has managed to castle, but at what cost? It cost him an exchange, didn't it? So, we see a kind of struggle here now, where both sides attempt to improve their pieces. Rook d1, of course, he could have gone to e1, but this move is quite a tricky move, because if black plays something like bishop b7, like this, it actually allows a tactic, and I think that's why Sergei moved his rook to d1 here, rather than e1. The idea was to play rook takes d7, and use that pin towards the queen here on b8. So, very impressive chess. He's just stopping black from playing. I think it's what we call prophylaxis. Trying to imagine what would my opponent do, and how can I stop my opponent doing that. So, black had to move his queen, knight e4. Okay, so maybe black should just play bishop b7 here, but instead black decided to take on f3, which seems a wise decision. But the problem now is, again, how are we going to play bishop b7? Because the knight is going to hang now on d7. So, e5, but the problem is, again, watch how Sergei develops this initiative. He's very strong at this, isn't he? He just keeps attacking, and a very nice move, knight d6. And I talked about those minor pieces, didn't I? How is black going to try and utilise this extra minor piece? He's not going to be able to do that now, is he? Because the rook on d1, the queen and the knight prevent the bishop moving anywhere. The knight is under attack here at some moment. So black is under some pressure now. Maybe we could say that black went a little bit wrong by pushing these pawns. And it's very easy to say that, but black is an experienced grandmaster here. So it just goes to show how playing with initiative, getting the feel of where should I put my pieces, what is my opponent trying to do, all really comes together, doesn't it, quite nicely here. And we can probably say that already this position is lost for black here, because there is a big threat, as we see here, of queen to b3 check, and the black king will be under heavy fire right there. So, knight c5, bishop e3. Again, not the only move. I think bishop e7 was strong as well, winning the rook. But we've seen in many games of Sergei's, he's not interested in winning pieces. He's really interested in the initiative. And the point of bishop e3 is that black is under a lot of pressure to do something about this knight. It looks simple, but actually it's not. And we see in just a few moves why that is. And here we go, queen b3 check. Black actually resigned here, basically because after king goes to h8, knight f7 check will be winning. In fact, we should probably show this, because this leads to a very nice idea. I've never actually had the opportunity to play this in one of my games, but this Hillarp's checkmate of queen to g8 check, rook takes g8, knight f7 smothered mate onto the king is a really nice idea. And it's one of those ones I believe all chess players would like to pull in their games. So probably a bit disappointing for Karjakin that Hillarp Persson resigned after queen b3 check, but okay, the point was being made. Development, playing for the initiative, and it's a good lesson for all of us.